see.
Okay.
So we are live. I'm here with Anthony from Avoiding Babylon. Anthony, how you doing?
I'm very good, David. Nice to meet you.
Hey, did you see the link there if you wanted to share it? It's on YouTube now, yeah?
So I'm looking for it and I don't.
It should
Let's
be on
see.
my welcome page, the homepage of the YouTube channel.
Let's see.
I'll go there
Um,
myself and take a look.
um, I don't know
Yeah, there you
why.
are.
No.
There you are. I'll send you the
Oh,
link.
there I am. Okay, I
Oh, you
got it.
got
All
it?
right. So what I'll do is I will share that to Twitter, and then I will share it to my Telegram.
Thank you very much.
And my Telegram. This is an interesting, fun start.
Well, this is how I roll. It's amateur hour over here.
Okay, so nice to meet you, David.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for taking the time to
I don't
come
know
and
if you
talk to
know
me.
what you got yourself into tonight having me on, but it's going to be a fun ride.
Yeah, should be fun. So, the way I do my show, I like to make it biographical in the first part, and then we get into Catholicism and stuff like that. But the
Okay.
first part is just about you, like how were you raised, and how did you first come to understand that there's God and religion, and talk us through all that good stuff up until today.
Okay, so I was raised in a very Catholic home. I have 8 siblings, 4 brothers, 4 sisters, no twins. Um, my mother was and is still the one of the most special people that God has ever created. She was raised in a very nominal home, but she used to walk to mass as a kid. She just always had a love for God, and then she wound up getting my dad to go on a trip to Medjugorje when he was around, I would say probably around 35, 36. And my father had a huge conversion in Medjugorje, came back. He was playing music at the music ministry, and the whole family started taking the faith seriously. My parents stopped using birth control, and they had another 5 kids. So they had 4 kids, then there was an 8-year gap. And then they went on that trip. They came back and they had another 5 kids after that. And my mother lost 3 kids to miscarriage. So I really would have had 11 siblings. But yeah, so I grew up in a very Catholic home. But around 18, 17 or so, I drifted and got myself caught up in mortal sin, basically, and left the faith for, I would say, probably till I was about 27. And then, but before that, like even when I got married, my wife is Lutheran, and I knew enough about my faith to know I had to get married in the Catholic Church. So then when I was about 27, I went to my wife's Lutheran service on Easter Sunday. And the pastor was talking about the resurrection of Jesus. And I remember coming home and sitting out on my front porch, and I was just sitting there questioning, like, did Jesus really rise from the dead? And I was going over my head. I'm saying maybe he wasn't dead. Maybe they just, maybe they thought he was dead, but he didn't really die. And because if you think about the accounts, I mean, these men went and talked about him and went to death for saying they saw him risen from the dead. So I went out, I was outside and I said, God, if you're real and you prove yourself to me, I will change my life. I went inside and I put on Netflix, and on Netflix, in my recently watched, a documentary on the Shroud of Turin popped up. Now, I never watched this documentary. It should not have been in my recently watched. I don't know why it was in there, but I started that documentary as an agnostic and I finished it as a Christian. Now, this isn't Catholic at this point, just Christian. So I was Catholic, but I didn't understand the faith whatsoever. Now that lasted very short, brief period of time because I think I did some kind of sinner's prayer or something. It's like, like an altar call type thing. Jesus, come into my heart. And that lasted very shortly, briefly. And I wound up losing that. And then I remember I went to Atlantic City, lost a ton of money. And then on my way home, I heard a Protestant preacher and once again gave my life to Jesus and said, please, Jesus, come into my heart. Came home, and I remember talking to my mom about it, and I was really struggling with, can you lose your salvation? Because I had that original experience, and then I stopped practicing any kind of faith whatsoever. I never went to church or anything. And then when the second time it happened, I really didn't want to lose it. Like, I really wanted to start taking my faith seriously. And I just started listening to like Protestant radio and stuff. And I thought everything was fine until I started hearing this Protestant preacher talk about how the Catholic Church, like Jesus came to abolish religion and the Catholic Church was the whore of Babylon. And I'm like, that can't be right. Like, I know enough to know that can't be right. Like, I know my mom is not, my mom, she's just a very holy person. I knew enough. So I started looking into Catholicism and I stumbled upon a Scott Hahn talk, and it was his conversion story. And that from that moment, my life was changed, and I was an evangelist for the Catholic Church at that point, and I fell in love with the Catholic faith. And ever since then, I have been in a deep study of my faith and just trying to learn more every chance I get.
Amazing. Forgive me if I didn't catch everything you said there and hold it in my memory, but did you talk about your siblings at all?
So I have 8 siblings. So I'm in the first batch. I'm number 3 out of 9.
Yeah, but the faith journey, I'm talking about the faith journey of your siblings. Just
So
roughly, are they all Catholic or?
No. See, this is kind of the issue when you have a father who doesn't catechize the kids. So my mom always took the faith seriously, and then my dad comes back and he's playing in the music ministry and all that stuff, but then he drifted away from the sacraments too, and he never really taught us the faith. So on my channel right now, what I've really been trying to do is fix some of the things I think my dad did wrong in that area. So I've been trying to talk to my audience a lot about how do we talk to our children and make sure our children keep the faith. Because I was raised in this very Catholic environment. I mean, my mom prayed the rosary with us when we were kids, but all of us left the faith at one point. And it wound up, I think I was the first one to come back. Then my brother Joey came in right behind me. Now, my brother Joey's about 10 years behind me. Then my sister Chrissy came back into the faith later. And then my brother Frankie came back in. So right now, I think and my sister Teresa came back in. So right now, it's really just 3 of my siblings that are not going to mass. And 6 of them, all 9 of us left.
Yeah.
And only 3 are not going to mass right now. One of my sisters was living out of wedlock with a boyfriend. He proposed to her. She said yes. And 6 months into the engagement, she broke it off with him. And she's at a convent right now, discerning a religious vocation.
Mm.
And she's in year 1 of like trying to discern it. So she goes there for like 3 months, then she comes home for a week, then she goes back for 3 months, and she comes home for a month. Like, so this is the first this is the first year that she's doing that, and she's trying to see if she's going to become a nun.
Which order is that?
She's number. I'm sorry, you asked which number?
Which religious order?
The Passionist nuns.
Okay, who founded that? Do you know?
So I know it's the School of Jesus Crucified was one of the. You know what?
I'll Google it.
I'd have to look.
I'll Google it, or you can Google it.
Yeah, maybe Google it. But yeah, it's the Passionist nuns, and they just their charism is just meditating on the Passion of Christ.
The Passionists,
and
it's Paul of the Cross was born in 1694. He wrote the rules. Yeah, St. Paul of the Cross. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think he wrote a book called the School of Jesus Crucified.
Okay,
I'm pretty sure, or maybe somebody who I don't know if he actually.
Did you tell me what your ethnic background is? Are you Italian or what?
I'm Italian. Yeah.
Took a guess. I took a guess. A wild guess.
Yeah, I'm from New York. I'm a stereotypical New York Italian.
So someone said you're the Rocky of Catholic YouTube. Is that true?
Yeah, basically. I try my best to hide the accent, but it's hard.
Do you know Sean McGinnis and Dion? Yes. Dion, I don't know who that is.
That's my friend Don. Everybody in there is probably all my friends.
Don, you got Laura and Kate. Don says don't get him started on his family, so I'll try to steer you away from that. I'm very, 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 very skeptical of Medjugorje. Do you want to give me? You want to try to? Oh, you are.
So
okay.
Very.
I see a book. I see a book behind you, Medjugorje.
So yeah. So So now my parents went, and my dad had this conversion. They had a lot of things happen to them while they were there, right? My dad's rosary beads turned gold, but what you'll notice is that his conversion didn't last, right? His
Ah,
conversion didn't last.
ah.
And it's like, I mean, I am a traditional Latin mass going Catholic. Like I don't like not that I so because the charismatic renewal are some of the most faithful Catholics I've ever met. I grew up, my parents took me to like a charismatic retreat when I was younger, and that actually had a negative effect on me because everybody around me was being slain in the spirit and crying, and he was just confused because I felt nothing, and I it really had a bad effect, and it was part of the reason for a while. So all I know is that led to my dad's conversion, but it never lasted. So I'm also very skeptical of Medjugorje. That book is from when they went, and I just have it sitting around. I've never opened
Oh,
it.
okay. I've got a good friend in Australia, one of my listeners, and he strongly believes in it, and he sees the fruits of it and this sort of thing. But
There's a
he,
lot of conversions from it, but there's also a lot of confusion from it. So I'm
yeah,
I just with especially with apparitions, it's like there's so many approved apparitions that the
yeah,
church says these are okay.
yeah.
Like to go and flirt with some that
No,
aren't, I just
no.
say, why would you even bother? Like
Exactly, exactly. So what about this Lutheran woman you married? What's up with that? Did she convert to Catholicism yet,
so
or
yeah,
what's happening?
so I have my conversion about 3 years into our marriage, 4 years into our marriage, and I'm like on fire for God. I'm learning my faith, and I'm starting to go to mass, and she wants to come to mass with me just because my wife is always at least let me lead the family no matter what. So she starts coming to mass with me, but she couldn't receive. I told her right out, I'm like, you're not Catholic, you can't receive. So she decided to convert mainly because she wanted to make sure she was the same faith as her children now that we were doing this. And she joins RCIA. It was a nightmare of a program. I wound up arguing with all the people in the RCIA program because the things that were coming out of that program were so bad. It was like they were telling her the priesthood was an invention of the Catholic Church, and it was just bananas. Like so many crazy things coming out of there. So I'm like, you know what? Just make your confirmation, get confirmed, and then we'll find a new parish and we'll go somewhere else. So we wound up doing that. Then um, my wife, over the past few years, some things have happened to her that wound up, she has fallen so deeply in love with the Catholic faith over these past few years, but it was on her own. It was a thing where she saw me raising my kids, and we would sit in the den and we would pray the rosary. I was teaching my kids the rosary in Latin, and she'd be cleaning the kitchen, just sitting there listening to me pray the rosary with the kids in Latin. And it just piqued her interest. I never pressured her. I never got on her case about any of it. She just saw the witness of me really like praying with the kids every night, and she just softened her heart and really started digging in and learning her faith. And it's been such a beautiful thing to watch her faith blossom and to have some deep conversations with her about things. And she's so grateful that she has a husband that takes this seriously now. It's been such an awesome ride with
Wow,
her.
cool. I always ask my married male guests to please, please, please ask your wife to come on and talk to me and give their side of the story. That would be fun.
Of course. My wife is very shy though.
That's what they all say. They all say the same
I'm,
thing. She's too
I'm
shy.
telling you, I had to drag her. So we did a show on temperaments, and we interviewed a couple that wrote a book on temperaments. So my co-host Rob, we both wanted to bring our wives on because they were a husband and wife. So I told my wife, I'm like, I already told them you'd come on. She was so angry with me. I'm like, but I already told them you can't disappoint them. And she doesn't, and she's such a people pleaser. She wanted to kill me. But yeah, she's not one for the limelight, but I'll ask.
You can ask. Yeah, you can ask, and you're the head of the household, so you could kind of strong arm her
Yeah.
a little bit. So, what about this podcast, the Avoiding Babylon? I haven't really checked it out. I don't really like Catholic content because it just depresses me because there's so much negativity. I saw though, I did look up today your little blurb, and you say you don't like to dwell on the Pope bashing and all that sort of thing. So that was a plus
we
for me.
we try not to even discuss the hierarchy in any way.
Cool.
Like I'm a layperson. I have no authority to make any determinations about the hierarchy. I don't care what they're doing. We try to talk about things in the culture. We try to make people remember that it's joyful to be Catholic. So the show is mainly a mix of comedy and inspiration. And then we even do a trivia show, a Catholic trivia show. But we're trying to do something so unique because I feel the same exact way as you. Everybody is trying to just, because look, people click on those things.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to know the last thing Francis said. Everybody wants to know the latest crazy thing coming out of Rome. So we've made an active decision to steer clear of those things. And we've had just the guests that we've had on have been people that have like really told these amazing stories about their journeys, things like that. We had Gavin Ashenden on, who's the former chaplain to the Queen of England. And he came on and told us a story about him smuggling Bibles into Russia during the Cold War. And it was like listening to an action movie. It was one of the most amazing stories I had ever heard. So we do everything we can to not do what everybody else is doing. We want to really try to make people come and laugh. And I promise you, if you watch one show, you will sit and you'll laugh. Sometimes we play a goofy video that we find on YouTube and we'll just do commentary on it. We do talk about a lot about fathers' responsibilities for being husbands and fathers and things like that.
How did you meet your co-host Rob, and who's the lead and who's like is it 50-50 sort of with the contribution, or what is it?
Okay, so I started the channel. My first video was on the mandate because the vax mandate. So I know. The first video was me just making a stand and saying, I don't care if I lose my job, I'm not taking this thing. From there, I did a couple of videos on typology, biblical typology, because I love biblical typology. My heart lights up when I study typology. And then I started this Catholic trivia show. So we did one episode of Catholic trivia, and Rob's wife actually volunteered him to be the first contestant.
No way.
Yeah. So Rob's wife knew me on Twitter, and I posted, I'm going to be doing a Catholic trivia show. And his wife said, Rob, get on here. You're doing trivia. So he came on the first episode, and I had such a good rapport with him and had such a good time with him that I called him the next day and I said, Rob, why don't you, because we talked in the green room for a little bit, and he was like, I think I might start a channel too. So I called him the next morning. I said, forget starting your own channel. I don't want to do this alone. Like, I'm much more conversational. I don't want to sit in front of I feel weird being in front of a camera alone to this day. So if I'm having a conversation with someone, it's a totally different ball game. I feel right in my element. So he came on and we just started doing this thing together. And the channel has morphed so many times. It started as just trivia, went from trivia to doing interviews. Now, then it went back to, so the thing we've been working on the past week, we want to tell a story of typology in scripture that I don't think anybody's ever heard, which is that the book of Ephesians is a typological fulfillment of the prophecy in Daniel about Nebuchadnezzar's dream. So we've been preparing for a week. We have all this stuff prepared, and we're going to tell that story on Tuesday. It's going to be a 2-part series, and we're going to start it on Tuesday.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
Yeah.
So, just a little bit more about Rob, because I'm going to be interviewing him, but I'd like to hear what you have to say about him. But like, in terms of personality, are you kind of like the brash New Yorker? Yeah. And he's what is he though?
So the reason we work is because I am very. I'm a very large presence, I guess you could say. And Rob's actually very, so he's a phlegmatic. He thinks a lot before he speaks. So especially on times when we're doing interviews, I mainly control the interview, and Rob will interject with something brilliant because he's so smart. And he just is very measured in the things that he says, where I just say whatever comes to my mind. I don't think about it. It just comes right out. Now, he is brilliant with the tech stuff. He's brilliant with show ideas, things like that. So the two of us are 100% partners. It's not like it's my channel and he's a guest. It is 50-50. We split this channel. He is very creative in the background, and a lot of the stuff that he does, people don't see. I don't think I could do this channel without him. I don't think he could do it without me. The two of us really do work so well together as a team. I couldn't have been happy with my choice.
Well, I was very pleased when you messaged me on Twitter and you said that Rob couldn't make it, not because I don't like Rob, but because I'm a one-on-one person. I don't
Yeah.
really deal well with group. Like I'm just a little bit simple-minded, and I like to focus on one person at a time. So that was good news. But I'm
Yeah,
very
it'll be
much
good
looking
to
forward to meeting him.
Yeah, it'll be good to get him on alone. I think because especially because when we're on something together, I tend to talk over him and stuff. I'd rather him come on with just you and you get to, and I'll enjoy watching that.
Which part of the States is he in? He's not in
He's in Minnesota. I'm in New York.
Minnesota. Where is that about?
Oh,
Like it's
uh, it's Midwest. So
Midwest?
yeah, Midwest. Where are you?
Minnesota. I'm in Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Oh wow. Okay. Yeah, he's in the Midwest. So he's like you know what? I don't have a
What's
map, but
Minnesota? What's Minnesota like? What's the reputation down in the States about Minnesota?
um
Is that the show me state? No, that's Missouri, right?
I don't know. Minnesota, I would say it's where,
Farmers?
yeah, it's definitely like farm country, but I would say it's probably most well known for being Elon Omar, the politician's home state.
No way.
Yeah, Elon Omar is from Minnesota.
Okay.
So,
State. I'm just going to look up their slogan or whatever it's called, just to see if it
yeah, I
rings
don't
any
even,
bell.
I guess New York's is what I love
The,
New
s-
York. I don't even know my
the
own
s-
state
they're
slogan.
called the Star of the North. So I don't know that.
Star of the North.
Never heard
Yeah, I
that
think it's like
before.
they call it like Southern Canada.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like because it's very far north. Like I think he still has snow on the ground over there.
And your slogan is Excelsior,
Oh yeah, Excelsior. I thought it was I love New
ever
York. I don't even
upward,
know.
ever upward. So interesting. So yeah, I look forward to meeting him. But back to you. So this thing with Ephesians, that sounds really interesting. What's your approach to the Bible generally? What I'm really excited about is the Old Testament because it's so controversial, and non-Christians love demonizing the Old Testament. They love it.
It's just such a it's the book that laid the foundation for civilization. It's like, especially with the story that we're going to tell. So if you understand what happens in Daniel's prophecy, well, in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, Nebuchadnezzar has this dream of a statue and has a head of gold, a chest of silver, um, a body of bronze, and legs of iron. And the prophecy itself is about four empires or kingdoms. And it starts off with the Babylonian Empire, then it has the Persian Empire, then the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire. And Nebuchadnezzar is the king of kings. Now he's uniting Jews and Gentiles together under this one empire, but it's through tyranny. And the idea is that when Paul is speaking in Ephesians about the mystery of the body of Christ and why we call the church the body of Christ, it's because he's reflecting back on this image. So my whole understanding of the Old Testament is that everything is a foreshadow of what's to come when Christ comes. Every single thing you see. So when you see Moses is born and Pharaoh puts out a command to kill all the newborn Israelites, that's the same thing that happens when Herod puts out a call to kill all the newborn Israelites. Moses escapes to Egypt when his mom puts him in the basket. He escapes to Egypt. Mary and Joseph take Jesus to Egypt. Moses fasts in the desert for 40 days. Jesus fasts in the desert for 40 days. There are all these things that point toward Christ when he comes. Joseph is sold into slavery for 20 pieces of silver for the price of a slave. Jesus is sold by Judas for the cost of a slave, 30 pieces of silver. And I think if you like add the inflation from 20 to 30, it like works out perfectly. All of these stories are meant to point us toward the coming of the king.
Absolutely. So it's so exciting, and it's sad. I find it sad, just the catechesis in the church today. I don't know what it's been like in the past. Someone, I think it was Steve Cunningham, sent me a link to a historian talking about the church through the Middle Ages and how the rad trads, as I call them, excuse me if you are one, forgive me. But
No, I'm not. No, I look, I would say I'm a Catholic who loves the traditional liturgy.
yeah, yeah.
That's all I would say.
But this video by this historian was talking about how it's not as beautiful as we might fantasize that it was. The Middle Ages and the good old days. They weren't
Yeah.
so squeaky clean. They weren't
It's
so
always been a
perfect
mess.
in the church. It's been a mess.
It's always been a
And
mess.
but as I was saying, I'm a little bit disappointed with the catechesis of Catholics today. And it really is for me. I came into the church from atheism. I was actually an atheistic Satanist, and I was atheist for 25 years. So I was an enemy of Christ and His church. But when I realized that God is God, that I'm not God, and then when I realized I didn't want to become Christian, I just was sort of just by happenstance. Someone gave me a book by Saint Augustine, the Confessions, and that made me fall in love with
I was just
Christianity.
reading that last night.
Beautiful, beautiful. But my point here is with all this rambling is that when I entered the church, when I made the decision to become a Christian and enter the Catholic Church, I couldn't sate my appetite for reading about the history of the church, about the saints, the lives of the saints, the writings of the saints, history of the councils, the history of the popes, warts and all, and everything that's Catholic. There's so much treasure and richness that we have, as you know, and so I just devoured it.
Hmm.
And so I'm a little bit astonished when I meet a Catholic who hasn't at least started to devour all of that treasure. And there are different parts you could attack. You could be more focused on the Bible or on different aspects of the Catholic faith. But for someone to not be excited about some part of that treasure, I find a little bit odd. You know what I mean?
It's one of the most beautiful things about our faith. It's like I look at my mother, and my mother has this really deep devotion and closeness to God, and she loves reading like Saint Teresa of Little Flower. And then I look at me, and I love the big picture.
Oh,
I love seeing how before the resurrection, the world was a totally different place. I mean, people can't fathom how different the world looked back then. It was upside down compared to what you can see today. And when I read in Isaiah that he says, the people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. And then God's spirit will cover the earth. And he says in the Old Testament that he will write his law on everyone's hearts, that he will no longer have to worry about circumcision because he'll circumcise our hearts. And when you understand how God's spirit totally covers the earth, and it made it so that to the point where we are today, where people take it so for granted that we live in a civil society where women aren't being raped, where people aren't being kidnapped and sold into slavery. And all of that is because of Christianity. When you have these Viking tribes come in and they first encounter Christians, they first come in on Sundays and destroy their churches and steal everything. And then eventually they get subdued and they convert to Christianity. It's like every culture that Christ encounters converts for 2,000 years. And that's now we're in this position where the nations who are already converted are turning their back on God. And you're starting to see these old practices come back again because the church is no longer walking around and having processions of incense to ward off these demons and these spirits. And I never realized how real they were. I really didn't. I really didn't understand. Like, we say we believe it, but I didn't realize how real spirits are. And until recently, I would say in the last 2 or 3 years, and seeing how chaotic the world is getting, and people, when they lose their identity in Christ, how far away they can actually get. So
insane.
the spiritual realm has really come alive for me in the past couple of years.
It's absolutely insane. Not to talk too much about my wife because she doesn't like when I talk about her, but she's very, very anti-Catholic. She was raised, she's Greek, so she was raised culturally Greek
Greek Orthodox.
Orthodox, and they have a very violent hatred of the Catholic Church, especially the Pope, whoever the Pope might be. But she's not practicing her faith, even though she thinks it's the best religion ever. But she's not practicing. But what we went through the past 3 years. I'm not going to say what it was, but you know what it was, because I've been kicked off YouTube a couple times for
Yeah.
talking about it. But and I never got the thing. I'm never going to get the
Yeah.
thing. But the manifest evil of Satan and his demons is so real, so palpable, and so obvious that now my beautiful wife is, starting.
Listen, I tell people
starting
all the
to-
time, there has never been a better time to evangelize
Yeah.
because people could see the chaos. It's like, this
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. Come on. It's so bananas that it's like, you have to say, like, we're not having these logical discussions anymore where it's like, okay, well, like people really thought if you got rid of God that you could just have a society based on reason. And that just doesn't work. It just doesn't work because people are designed to worship. God made us to worship. So when you look at every culture that ever existed in human history, they all worship gods. It's only Christianity who made the world so docile that people could even fathom there being no God. But even those people, they need their creation myth, so they have evolution. They need their
Yeah.
end times myth, so they have climate change. They
Yeah.
need their holy days, so they have Pride Month. They need, I mean, you really think about it, they are just as religious as we are, but they do religion differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I was going to ask you about creationism. I'm a young earth creationist for lack of a better term. You know, some people don't like that term, but it's just easy way to distinguish me from the whatever the bulk of Catholics believe in some form of theistic evolution, I think. That's what the Pew Research polls seem to indicate. Anyway, I don't know, but you know, are you a creationist, and what happened there?
I think evolution is absurd.
Yeah.
I think it's preposterous to think something can come from nothing. And if you're talking about survival of the fittest, right? So basically, they say that the genes that are the strongest will survive. How can you have genes survive that don't exist? I mean, how can you have a clump of cells, this primordial sludge, then become a frog and a dog? And I mean, I do think that we have microevolution, which would be like adaptation, but you'll never see interspecies jumping. You'll never see a frog become a bird. You'll never see anything like that. I think it's preposterous. And I think it is just a creation myth for the atheist because everybody needs a creation myth. I don't know how old the earth is, but I do believe that before the flood, there was a thriving society and the flood wiped it out. Like, I think that people, so if, I recently watched Graham Hancock's that Ancient Apocalypse, and he goes through it and he starts talking about how there's these giant monolithic structures that just don't make sense how they came there, and there is no way that these people had this technology, but there's evidence that a giant flood wiped out a civilization at some point, and then other people came and occupied these temples after. These were temples built to gods, and I think that these were all the temples built to the gods before the flood. And I think that things got so out of hand and God sent the flood and wiped everything out. I even am starting to think that the giants in the book of Enoch, and I'm beginning to think those were actual giants.
Yeah, why not? I mean, it's not that preposterous, you know.
No, I don't think it is.
Just like the idea of a unicorn, everyone makes fun of the unicorn like it's some kind of fantastical creature. It's just a horse with a horn on its head. It's not that wild.
When you look at even dragons, right? Every culture has stories about dragons. Now, why would it not be that maybe these stories endured through the flood because people saw something like dinosaurs roaming the earth before the flood? Now, the thing is, like, with all the carbon dating and things like that, I think if this flood was so massive, it would have done such a damage on the geological system that I don't think they have a look. Here's what I know. The same people telling you the earth is 5 billion years old are the same people telling you that life doesn't begin at conception. They're the same people that are telling you take that thing because it's going to save you, and it never did. They're the same people trying to tell you that a boy that puts on a dress is a woman. They're the same. I mean, I don't believe them. I don't believe them. I really think they have so much bias towards wanting evolution to be true that they will lie right to your teeth. If you go back and you watch the way they tried to fill in the blanks for the evolution of humans, they would throw fake bones in there and things like that just to try to make it like a more coherent theory. It's just, I just don't believe any scientists. I think that that's their religion, and they're willing to lie just like the Mohammedans do if it means getting rid of the Christian.
Have you seen Hugh Owen and the Colby Center?
Yes.
His video series they did on creation.
Yes.
Have you seen that?
I didn't watch the whole thing. I watched 1 or 2 episodes.
It's pretty cool. It goes into a lot of depth. It goes into more depth than I would like in terms of it's too much emphasizing the natural science approach. I'm 100% young Earth creationist because of the dogmas, for example,
church.
of the dogmas of the church, the Immaculate Conception.
There's something so sad about a church that lost its confidence.
Yeah.
And because of the pressures of the world started going, oh, maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're wrong. It's like, come on. We know what we believe. Who cares what the world says?
I want to be a geocentrist. My friend's a geocentrist, and I would prefer to be a geocentrist. I'm just not there yet, whatever.
Have you
And,
seen the movie The Principal?
yeah.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Robert Genesis movie?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
thought it was
yeah.
great.
I
I
thought
thought
it
it
was
was
good.
very
Yeah,
well
yeah,
done.
yeah. I'm leaning, I am leaning there. It's just I worked at the Canadian Space Agency. I studied physics. I've got a lot of programming to undo.
Well, David, look at it like this. It's like what like in that documentary they present. It's like Einstein's theory of relativity. Wherever you're standing,
It's relative.
things are going around you.
Yeah, it's
We
relative.
are the center of the universe. It's not. I understand the planet goes around the sun, but if Earth is stationary, then everything's going around going
Yeah,
around the Earth.
it's relative. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's a
So
relative where you're standing.
I'm definitely leaning towards it, and I want to be, and I haven't looked into it. For one thing, I do believe that the center of the universe is Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ is here in the Eucharist, for example. And it's a good example of Christ's presence on earth. And so, yeah, if Christ is the center of the universe, then the earth is where he is, and so the earth is the center of the universe in every way that matters, right? So
Yeah.
that's pretty much all I need to know, and I really don't care about the geometry and all the the way things are moving about relative to each other. I
Can
really
I
don't
ask
care.
you what after this 25 years of being an atheist, and you said you were even dabbling in Satanism?
Yeah,
What
atheistic Satanism.
atheistic Satanism? What actually sparked your conversion?
I was studying philosophy, so I for 25 years I was even at age 14 I was reading logical positivism, which is one of the most debunked philosophies of all time, which is very dominant today in this materialistic world because it just says that everything's materialism and everything has cause, and there's no supernatural and these sorts of things. It's called logical positivism. That's where I started at age 14 when I lost my faith. That's not what caused me to lose my faith, but it was just when I lost my faith, I started looking into philosophy. And, over the years, going down lots of rabbit holes in the tradition of Western philosophy, I ended up going into the rabbit hole of German idealism. And eventually I ended up being a hard solipsist, which means that I'm the only mind. I'm a disembodied mind with no real body, and there's no other people or anything like
Wow.
that. So it was quite a journey, and it was actually Rene Descartes of all people, who was not really well viewed by the church. He was a bit unorthodox, to put it mildly, but he's the one who actually brought me out of my hard solipsism and brought me to God. So I was a monotheist, but I called myself a de facto Muslim because I didn't believe in Muhammad or the Quran, but I didn't want to be a Christian, and I didn't think that I was able to be a Jew.
Mm.
And so, yeah, you can give some follow-up questions if you want, but I'm really curious what you think about Islam and Judaism. So it's up to you where you go from here.
No. Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to derail your interview.
No,
I was
no,
just
it's okay.
curious.
It's okay. If you have follow-up questions about my conversion, feel free to ask them.
So,
But
so what particularly, I would say, I mean, Islam is an Nestorian heresy. It is, I mean, even if you look in the Quran, there's a lot of Christian prayer in there and things like that, but it really did arise from a Nestorian heresy. It was described as such. They were heretics. They were considered heretics by the church for a long time. I think that they're also, I mean, they're all part of the biblical narrative because Abraham is going to be a father of a multitude, and he has Ishmael and Isaac, and the descendants of Abraham are the descendants of Ishmael are the Mohammedans, and the descendants of Isaac are the Jews. Now, the what baffles me about modern Jews is that they see all these Old Testament prophecies about Yahweh's spirit covering the earth and all the Gentiles will worship him one day, and they don't see it as that happening. It's like we all go and we worship the God of Abraham, and they don't see that as a prophecy fulfilled, and it baffles me.
it's unbelievable. It's supernatural. It's a supernatural blindness.
It is. It's 100% a supernatural blindness because God put a hardness over
Yeah.
Israel's heart. Now, the thing is, he will then put a hardness over the Gentiles' heart, and the time of the Gentiles will come to an end, which it seems like we're in right now. Seems like the time of the Gentiles has been fulfilled, and you're going to see a mass conversion of the Jews soon. I
Yeah.
mean, I think we are witnessing something huge on the horizon.
Yeah, I always love Romans 11 where St. Paul talks about, if it's St. Paul who wrote that, I guess it is, who talks about he wrote
All
Romans, right?
Israel.
He wrote
Yeah,
Romans, yeah.
absolutely.
It's Hebrews that they're not sure if he wrote it or not. Is that the one?
Yeah, I don't care if they say they're not sure. Paul wrote them. Paul wrote
Okay.
them both. He wrote Hebrew.
Okay.
Absolutely, Paul wrote them.
Okay. Okay.
He
So,
wrote. Listen. Paul. You can tell Paul wrote Hebrews because Paul was Paul was a student of Gamaliel. Paul was so well versed in the Old Testament that it's amazing that he was the apostle to the Gentiles. Like it's amazing that he was the apostle to the Gentiles. You would think he would have been the apostle to the Jews because he was so well. Every single thing that Paul writes, he is citing something from the Old Testament. It's so amazing. So when you read Hebrews, he's really describing the high priesthood of Jesus Christ to the Jews, showing how Jesus is the new temple. So
it's
yeah, I'm
amazing.
sorry.
It's
What
amazing.
were you
It's
gonna?
amazing, but I think God, he likes to draw straight with crooked lines. So
Absolutely, yeah.
he'll give the quarterback the hockey stick, and he'll give the,
Yeah, it's so
you know
funny,
what I
man.
mean?
Like prophecy's never fulfilled the way you think it's going to be. It's always he always throws a left when you think he's going right. It's an amazing thing.
But you know about the Jews coming back in. That's what you were just talking about. They're going to come back because there's a partial hardening for this time and
Hmm.
whatnot. Um, so this is a topic that is very controversial today, which is anti-Semitism
Oh yeah,
like I'm a fan, whether you like it or not. I'm a fan of Nick Fuentes. I just happen to like the guy, but I don't agree with his
yeah.
I don't agree with
Well,
his
I'm a
politics or
fan of E.
anything.
Michael Jones. I love E.
Yeah.
Michael Jones. I think he's phenomenal.
Yeah, but it's just a chemistry I have with certain talking heads, and I find them entertaining and whatever. But I really don't understand anti-Semitism because of Romans 11. They're going to come back in, like, and because of that passage where we are dogs eating the scraps under the table of the Jews. It's like that's how I view myself. I view the Jews as the chosen people, and the Jews today have missed the boat because of that hardening that has come upon
So
them.
in Romans 11, Paul says all Israel will be saved,
Yeah.
right? Now, does that mean every single Jew? No. But what it means is, so when you look at the diaspora, when you look at, at a certain point, the 10 northern tribes break off in the Old Testament. So you have the 12 tribes of Israel and the 10 northern tribes break off. Now, when they break off so much that they get scattered amongst the Gentiles. So much so that they, for all intents and purposes, have become Gentilized. Okay. Now, there's prophecies in the Old Testament that God will one day unite his people again. So a lot of Christians will say, where are the lost tribes of Israel? Where are the lost tribes of Israel? Are they this tribe in Papua New Guinea? Are those the lost tribe? No, they were so much integrated with the Gentiles that the only way God could bring them back in was by converting the Gentiles. So in order for God to fulfill his promise to unite all of Israel again, he had to convert the Gentiles. So that's how all Israel winds up being saved.
That's
It's
pretty
such an
cool.
amazing fulfillment of scripture. It's unbelievable.
Where did you hear this? I've never heard this before.
Scott Hahn. There's
Ah,
actually, if you go to the St. Paul Center, he does a talk on Romans 11 called "Will All Israel Be Saved?"
cool. Very
And
cool.
it's one of the it's one of the listen. I don't care what anybody says. Scott Hahn is the greatest scripture scholar. The way he purveys. I'm not a fan of his writing.
Okay.
I love his talks though because
Okay.
he explains things in a way that I'm just blown away by. But I'm not crazy about his writing to be honest. Like I find his books a little boring.
Ah, what he does, I guess, is that he sees things that other people don't necessarily see.
Absolutely.
That's a gift. That's a real
Yeah.
gift.
Yeah. If you ever have a chance to check that talk out, Will All Israel Be Saved? It's one of those talks that just when you realize what God was doing in the diaspora, it's like and that's why Jesus goes to the Samaritans. So the Samaritans are basically just Jewish heretics. So they have the Pentateuch, they have the 5 books of Moses, but they also mix in these other gods. So when Jesus is going to see the woman at the well, the apostles are scandalized. Like, you can't go talk to a Samaritan. The Samaritans are Jewish heretics. They're idol worshippers. But Jesus is going there to save the lost sheep of Israel. And a lot of people don't pick up on that. He's going there to save the lost sheep of Israel. So they're not considered Gentiles really to him. They are the lost sheep of Israel. That's why he's going to talk to the Samaritans.
Yeah, another aspect of the chosen people I think is overlooked by Christians today for the most part is that there was sort of like this remnant idea where God wanted all of the Jews or whatever they were called, Hebrews or whatever they were, the chosen people. He wanted all of them to be the priesthood people to the nations, but then he reduced that to the tribe of Levi, and then to Aaron or whatever the successors of Aaron. So it was always diminishing because of the stiff-necked Jews were hard to manage. But that is the basic idea, is that since the fall, the project is, hey, let's bring people back to God, and for that there's always been this idea of the priesthood, and that's how I view the Jewish people, or the chosen people, to use the more generic term, because I guess the Jews came a later development in the chosen people, I would say, right?
Yeah, well, you also, and you look at, okay, so I work in New York, and you have to understand these are people who have been a nation for thousands of years, right? And they stay a nation because they have such peculiar rituals and such peculiar practices that they almost can't mix with other cultures. That's how God made them. He made them that way so that they wouldn't intermingle with the other cultures. Now, for 6,000 years, you're being told you're the chosen people by God. You're the chosen people by God. So that when I go and I work in a Jewish neighborhood, I'm not one of them. That you want, like, don't talk about anti-Semitism. They hate me. Like, they really hate me. You have no idea. It's like, you're not one of them. You're not part of their tribe. And it's something that, I mean, they've just been told for 6,000 years and really conveying it to their children. And that's something that you take to heart as a people, I imagine. So, it's
they got that anti-Japhethism down pat, I guess.
Yeah. That's basically.
So, since we're on the topic, I mean, I'm going to sort of spring this on you. It's a hot topic once again, and it's got basically nothing to do with Christianity. But there's a lot of division on blacks and whites in the States. I've noticed it's like a big political hot button issue. I think it's satanic. I think the whole racism thing is satanic as hell. And I think it's a trap that people fall into, where they think it's a thing. They think that there are human beings who judge each other based on skin color. I don't think it's a real thing. I think it's a hyped up, satanic, divisive trick, and people are falling for it. Like, nice, innocent Christians are falling into the trap of thinking that racism's real. What's happening?
Okay, so here's the thing. People don't hate people because of their skin color. They hate people because they have a different ideology.
Okay.
Think about it. Think about any time a black person comes out and he's a Christian, what they do to him, right? Like, anytime a black man comes out, they call him the most awful things. They'll say he's an Uncle Tom. They'll say, it's all about if you're part of their ideology. Racism itself is a very Protestant thing. It really is. America was founded on Protestantism. Now, if you look at what Catholicism does, when the Spanish go and they go into South America and Central America, the Spanish conquistadors, when they go in and they convert South America, the Spanish intermarry with the Aztecs, and they intermarry with the Mayans, and they build this beautiful mestizo culture. There's no the Spanish are looking down on them because they're different. No, they intermarry because once you have the same cult, the same worship, you can intermarry. It's the same idea as Jews and Gentiles being able to unite in one. And now the Jews and the Gentiles can marry because there's no more temple, and there's no reason why they can't. So when the Spanish Catholics go into South America, they actually form a new culture with the native people of that land. When America comes here and they're Protestant, they actually have cattle slavery, like chattel slavery or whatever it's called. And their churches, even though they're having their slaves learn Christianity, they're keeping them separate. They're not allowed to intermarry. And that's really the roots of racism, is a very Protestant thing. It's not Catholic in any way whatsoever. It just doesn't make sense. A Catholic culture is when you have the same cult, you're allowed to intermarry and you form a new, beautiful culture that way.
Thank you for sharing that, and thank you for reinforcing this beautiful new vision that I have for the colonization, or whatever you want to call it, where the Catholics came into North America. I'm reading. A reader actually recommended. One of my guests actually recommended that I read the story of Father de Smet. Father de Smet. He was a missionary in the 19th century, Jesuit, and it's a beautiful
Of
story.
course.
And it's reflecting what you're telling me now about the differences between the Catholic approach and the Protestant approach. And this is not to bash my non-Catholic Christian separated brethren, but the history, I'm very delighted to discover if it's true. I mean, I have to sort of take it at face value what I'm reading and what you're telling me. But if it's true, it's a beautiful encouragement that I'm part of the one true church.
So much of my falling in love with the faith was seeing how the church, wherever it goes, it encounters people who commit child sacrifice and human sacrifice, and they have these barbaric rituals, and the way women are treated, men have multiple wives and all these things, and the church comes in, evangelizes, and when the church isn't successful, Mary appears and Mary converts the people. And it's like it's just such an amazing thing that the church does. And there's a very, very specific reason that the Western church is the church that evangelizes the world and not the Eastern church. So like your wife is Greek Orthodox. The Orthodox are very ethnocentric. They're very that like your wife is very much like it's the Greek Orthodox Church. They're very much embedded in their ethnocentrism. That's why the Russian Orthodox are Russian Orthodox, the Greek Orthodox are the Greek Orthodox. Where the Latin Church, the Roman Empire, when they would go in and they would encounter a culture, they conquer Greece, but they allow the Greeks to remain Greek. And there's something about enculturation in the Latin Church that's why the church was able to actually evangelize the world. It's an amazing thing where they'll go into a culture, they'll see that they have all these pagan holidays, they'll baptize those holidays and allow the people to keep their customs. They don't force them to become something different. They say, look, no, you're still whatever culture you are. We're going to get rid of the things that are evil and pagan, and we're going to baptize you. You get to still have the same holiday, and whatever you were doing that wasn't harmful to you, you can keep those customs. It is such an amazing thing what the church did. And it's even modeled the church off the Roman Empire. You had Caesar in Rome, and you had these governors in the outposts. So you had Pontius Pilate in Jerusalem was the governor there. And then you have the Pope in Rome, and you have the bishops and all these outposts, and they're the the Roman Empire's outposts. It's such a, when you really understand what the church did and when Christ came and how it worked out so well, and how the Roman Catholic Church is the true church over the Orthodox Church.
Yeah, for sure. Well, for me, it's about the principle of unity that is in the Vicar of Christ. That's what does it for me. But, it's interesting. You mentioned South America, and in the book I'm reading about Father de Smet, he's using the Paraguay model because he looked at what they did in Paraguay, and it was so successful. The missionaries there, just the way that they evangelized and the way that they did just set up their camps and everything else, and the education and the hospitals and everything. And so, it's a very practical, very, very practical lifestyle being a missionary in the early 19th century and before. And there's a lot of practical problems to be solved, and serving people their basic needs, and the love that I feel from certain tribes, not every tribe. There were some tribes that were enemies, but the love that I feel from certain tribes, the Flatfoot come to mind because they're emphasized in this book as being very, very faithful and loyal and very much in love with the priests and the Catholic faith, and they converted readily, and they were going out of their way to help. And, since we've been talking a little bit about so-called racism and the black-white thing, I wanted to talk about a scene in the book where a very touching scene where the missionaries were poor and they're trying to raise funds so they can expand and they can go beyond to the next further west location to serve these tribes that need to be converted or whatever, that need to be civilized or whatever, even that's a controversial idea today. But they did some fundraising, and he just mentioned, Father de Smet mentioned in his writings that people were very generous, more generous than he thought they would be. And not only the Catholic, landowners or whatever they are, the people that live there, but even their slaves were contributing their mites, the parable of the mites, or the actual story of the mites in the Bible. So that really touched my heart, that there would be, an African-American slave in 1840 or whatever, that is Catholic and is happy with his slave masters and is contributing out of his
Yeah.
his little resources. It's such a beautiful thing. It really really touched my heart. So what do you get out of that sort of image?
Well, the thing is that it's like when Paul talks about whether you're a slave or not, like it's really about the your freedom comes from your freedom in Christ. It's like it doesn't matter your place in this life. It doesn't matter if you're a millionaire, it doesn't matter if you're in poverty. You can have freedom in Christ because true freedom comes from freedom and freedom from vice. Like it's not like if it really people misunderstand when Paul talks about slavery. He's saying, look, we're all going to be slaves to something. So you can choose to be a slave to whatever thing you're a slave to, or you can be a slave of Christ. And you can, as being a slave of Christ, you can actually merit more as a slave here, and your reward will be greater in heaven. And if you really believe that, it's like almost like a reward to be a slave on this earth, because the more you suffer, the closer you are to Christ.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I have to admit I'm very lazy
Yeah.
and I have a lot of weaknesses. Laziness is one of my main weaknesses. Um, and I don't like working. Like the only reason I work is because I'm a Catholic, right? You'll let me know if you have to wrap up, eh?
No. I got about at least another half hour, so we're good.
Okay. But I don't enjoy working. If someone gave me a bag of money, I'd just like chill all
Yeah.
day, every
I
day.
would have these conversations all day.
So, but the reality is, St. Paul says if you don't work, you shouldn't eat either. So it's something that we have to do, and I have to think of it as a sanctification. And I really like the Opus Dei for that reason. Have you looked into them at all?
So I've read Jose Maria Scriva's book, The Way.
Okay. Yeah, it's a
But I
popular
never
book.
studied anything with Opus Dei, but I've read The Way, and I think it's a beautiful book. And it's even if you could tie that in even with Saint Teresa of Little Flower, her little way. It's like if everything you do you offer as a little penance for God,
Yeah.
you merit things for that. If you go in and you say, if you don't look at your job as this miserable thing you're going to, and you go, I'm going to go to work today for God, you'll merit heaven.
Absolutely. I think the little things, I the reason I like doing little things for God, I did read The Little Flower and it did inspire me. But the reason I like doing the little things is because it's focused and um, there's more pomp and ceremony in my little gesture because like Saint Teresa says, if you just reach down and pick up a pin, do it for Jesus.
Yeah.
So often I'll see like I'll see some scrap on the floor and I'm like, I'm too lazy to bend down and pick it up and put it in the trash can, which is right next to it. I'm too lazy. I know that I'm too lazy to do it, but then I realize, oh, it's an opportunity, and I'll just stoop down, and though my back hurts, I'll stoop down, I'll pick it up, and I'll put it in the trash, and I'll do it for Jesus. And
Yeah.
for some reason, that becomes like a whole thing. Like it becomes like this, just like. Whereas if I try to do something big for God, I lose that sense that I'm doing something. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you want to know what's funny? Like, especially because the Protestant understanding of heaven is, it's like, oh, I've been saved. And they don't understand that there's a hierarchy in heaven and that we're going into a kingdom and there'll be a least and a greatest in heaven. And it's like what you're saying right now, those little things you do merit treasure in heaven. Where I think the Protestant understanding is like once you're saved, oh, that's it, I'm saved. There's no reason to do those little things to and offer them to God to actually grow closer in your spiritual life and work on your spiritual life. But those little minute tasks that you're doing in that little way will actually enliven your spiritual life more. And I understand what you're saying. Like the big things almost seem like too daunting, maybe. It's like, and you lose focus that you're actually doing it for God. Where if you just do that little thing, what you're doing is actually practicing the presence of God.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah,
it's a
exactly.
wonderful thing to do. You're practicing the presence of God, and when you do those little things, and you're constantly thinking of Him.
It's amazing. I really love this. Sounds like a segue, but it's what I was thinking of as you were speaking about doing the big things for God. What I was thinking about was the sacrament of reconciliation. And it's one example of, along with the mass, but even more than the mass for me as a great sinner, going to confession, I feel the results. Like if I walk in with sin, I come out, I feel like I've got wings. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd like you to share with my audience. You probably shared it with your own audience, but share with my audience, because a lot of my audience, they haven't been to confession in a long time, or maybe they've never been. A lot of atheists watch my show too. Share with my audience what it's like walking in burdened and coming out unburdened. What's it like? And can you talk about a specific experience where you really were scared to go in? Has that happened to you where you were thinking that,
I'll,
I don't
I'll
want
tell
to,
you,
I don't want to unburden?
I can tell you a million confession stories. So I can tell you this: if I don't go to confession once a month, my wife will notice. I get a little
Oh,
nastier. I get a
oh,
little, I get a little edgier,
ah.
and she'll notice and she'll look at me and she'll go, "I think you need to go to confession." And she's not saying it to be judgmental. She's saying it because she knows, like, okay, what's going on with him? Like there's something off there. And if you think about what confession is, look at the world around us. Everyone going to therapy to go and just pour your heart out, and you want to talk to somebody. There was something the wisdom of God was so amazing that he knew us saying our sins out loud and not going in and complaining about other people, going into a box and saying, this is what I did, and not focusing on anybody else or what anybody else made you do, what I did wrong. There's something so freeing about not just saying that, but when you say that, you now know, because a lot of people think you could just confess your sins right to God. Sure, you can. Okay. But you don't actually know what you need to confess until you verbalize it, until you have to do an examination of conscience and actually go through, because the church gives you this wonderful list that you can look through and say, okay, this is where I fell short. This is where I fell short. And you go in, and every time you go, it's like you're starting over, and you don't realize, well, not you, I'm just saying in general, people don't realize how freeing that is to have a reset and you get to start over. There was something I was struggling with for years, that I just kept using the confessional as a revolving door. And I kept getting this light penance, 3 Hail Marys. And I was like, come on, like, I'm really struggling with this thing. And I finally went into a priest, and the priest said, okay, listen to me. I want you to set your alarm for 3 o'clock every day. And when the alarm goes off, you pray either a decade of the Rosary or a decade of the Divine Mercy Chaplet. I still have that alarm set on my phone today because it kept God ever present in my life. And I have not struggled with that thing since the priest gave me that penance. And that was years ago. It's like the logic behind what God gave to us is just brilliant. It's something no human could ever invent.
It's amazing, when I confess, not to brag, but just to share my experience, when I
Yeah.
confess, I ask for forgiveness for the sins that I've confessed, but I also make a point to ask for grace. I say I'm here for forgiveness and for grace, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget that. I've actually had a priest tell me, like, why are you here? You're coming to confession too often. You should be out playing in the sunshine or whatever. And, I said, I'm here for the graces. And they said, well, these are not mortal sins, whatever. It's like, I would encourage every Catholic to go and confess frequently, to help as a defense against more serious sin.
Oh, definitely.
But just for graces in general, like for your family, graces for your health, graces for whatever. Like, I mean, if you're
Yeah,
studying, whatever.
going to confession is almost like getting rebaptized. I mean, you're walking out with your sins forgiven. It's a beautiful thing. It's like, you only get the experience of baptism one time. It's probably when you were an infant. I'm sure. I mean, if you converted later on, maybe you got to be baptized. But it's
No, I
like
didn't, unfortunately. No.
every time you go to confession, you get to be freed of your sins and you get to start over. And it's like, it really is such a beautiful thing God gave us. All this, like, just even you think about adoration. You go and you just kneeling before this God who humbled himself to the point where he became a piece of bread for us. Like, it's just such a mind twist where you really just have to meditate on that and just say, I'm looking at God in this little round piece of bread.
Yeah, and some of the saints saw him, right? So, there is one important distinction, obviously, to make. I just want to mention it, which is that there's the temporal consequences of sin that still linger after
Yeah.
confession. But we do have the indulgences. I want you to
Indulgences, yeah.
talk to me about indulgences. Did you ever get excited about indulgences? Do you remember to ask for indulgences every time you lift your thoughts to
I
God?
remember not even understanding indulgences, and it wasn't until like a Protestant had told me like the church was selling heaven or something, and I was like, "What the heck is going on here?" And now every chance I get, like on All Hallows Eve, I will go to a graveyard, or I'll go, I'll always follow that, and I'll go and I'll pray at the graveyard, and make sure I go to confession and mass and receive those indulgences, because and I'm also looking forward to the apostolic pardon. I'm praying I get that too, because if the apostolic pardon you can only get one time in your life, and it frees you from all temporal punishment of purgatory.
Remind me what that is again.
Okay, so if you when you go get last rites, if you go, well, which is really extreme unction, you're allowed to only receive it one time in your life. So make sure you're really on your deathbed if you ever get it. But a priest is allowed to give you an apostolic pardon,
Okay.
which they use the merits of the church to free you from all. It's basically an indulgence on your deathbed. As long as you have a priest present at your death, you can receive, but you only get it one time in your life. So if you have a scare, you can't get the apostolic pardon a second time. So you have to be careful. Don't use that thing up.
Yeah. Well, I read the revised norms for the indulgences. Have you read that little booklet?
No.
Okay. Well, basically, you've heard about the old school way with counting days, months, and years, and all that sort of stuff. You heard about that, right?
Yeah.
That's not the way they do it anymore. Now it's just like every time you lift your thoughts to God, which is what prayer is, basically,
Yeah.
as long as you have the intention of getting indulgences, you are getting indulgences. So it's something I have to remind myself of, frequently, because I forget. There's so many things. Like, I mean, I even forget to pray at meals to this day. It's been like
Yeah.
12 years I've been in the church, and I still forget to pray before meals, and I pray afterwards retroactively. So I'm not a good Catholic, but I love that we have all this stuff. I love that we have it.
Yeah.
And I've actually started keeping a spiritual journal, so that even when I'm at work, I'm keeping track. What am I doing? And
That's actually an amazing idea, and I wish I did that. I really should start doing that, because it really is good to see and track your progress in the spiritual life. And it's a good thing to be able to look back, like, where was I a year or two ago, especially during hard times, things like that. Keeping a spiritual journal, I've heard so many people say it's such an amazing idea and thing to do.
I mean, I have to admit, my spiritual life went down the toilet when I started keeping it, because I think Satan was attacking me. It was about the same time when I was trying to complete my first 5 Saturdays devotion. Like,
Yeah,
I've only completed it once, maybe twice. I can't keep track because I always mess it up, because Satan always messes with me every time I try to do that.
that happens.
But someone in the chat mentioned all the graces we can get when we're in the state of, all the indulgences we can get when we're in the state of grace. I just wanted to clarify that there is this concept of revival, that graces can revive. So even if you're not in the state of grace, still go through the motions, do your prayers and everything else. It's still, those graces will revive as soon as you're in the
Yeah.
state of grace. I wanted to just clarify that. It's very important, because the church is so gracious and kind and merciful, and because the church and Christ are one flesh, right? As St. Paul said.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? I know you don't have a lot of time left here, so are there some topics you wanted
No,
to cover?
David,
Or anything?
I just want to say this is such a fun conversation, man.
Yeah.
I love seeing, especially a convert come into the church and has this excitement for the faith, because it's like I know you're like a lot of people. Your faith can be a roller coaster. You have those ups and downs
Yeah.
and ups and downs, and having these conversations will keep you excited about the
Yeah.
faith. And if you don't have anybody to share these things with, it really is so important to always be having these conversations, which is why on our channel we don't focus on the controversy. It's like we want to talk about the things that are exciting, and I want people to listen to our channel and learn things. I guarantee you people learned something tonight watching this show. There was, like, we talked about some pretty cool things tonight. You taught me some things tonight. It's like it's always have conversations with other people. There's so many things trying to get our distract our attention from God right now, that it's just so important. We should always be listening to things on God, reading things about God, praying as much as we can. Keep your attention on God as much as you can, because there's so many distractions in the world. But yeah, this was such a great conversation, man. Thank you so much for inviting me on.
Well, yeah, I definitely want to have you back. I hope you come back. So many
Sure.
questions, so many questions for you, so many about your spiritual reading, your favorite saints, like so much, so much. But yeah, and just briefly, how many kids do you have?
3. So we've been trying for more. It's
Oh,
just
okay, it's fun trying. But
it definitely is.
are there? Are your 3 kids all named after some of your favorite saints, or no? Or are they just random names, or
We
what?
named my daughter is Stella Marie, after Stella Maris.
Ah,
So Sophia is my daughter. My wife picked that one, and then my son Nicholas. So yeah, all of them are after saints, but my wife picked Sophia.
Nicholas, you said?
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much. And are you going to watch when Rob comes on?
I definitely am. I wonder if he's watching. I don't think he is watching. He actually had to go do something tonight, so he probably wasn't able to.
We'll do
But
it.
yeah, I love seeing him do something separate from me, because sometimes I hog the spotlight. I talk too much, so it's always exciting to see Rob get a chance to shine a little more.
I'm going to do a practical joke on him. I'm going to say, well, oh, really? Is that what you think? Because that's not what Rob said. I mean, that's not what Anthony said. Anthony put it much better. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
I'll tell you right now, when you talk to Rob, he's much more reserved than I am. But when Rob talks, he has such deep insights. Like, he really is. He's such a smart guy. I love talking to him. He's one of my favorite people in the world. I definitely consider him my best friend now. I mean, I
Cool.
talk to him every single day. Whether we have a show or not, we talk every day.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like it's a lot of fun. I'm gonna have to definitely check out your channel
Check it
there.
out Tuesday. I'm telling you, you'll enjoy Tuesday's
Oh
show. We're going to
yeah.
present this story. It's going to
Oh
be an
yeah.
exciting one. Has nothing to do with controversy. If you
Yeah.
enjoyed any of like the little tidbits I
Yeah.
gave tonight,
Yeah.
you will love the show Tuesday. We're going to really bring something like special to the channel. I'm not going to go crazy promoting it. I'm just going to hope that people hear it and enjoy it so much that they share it, because it's
Oh,
going to be an exciting one.
amazing meeting you, and I hope you'll pray for me and mine
Absolutely.
every day, all day, every day, if possible, because we need the prayers. Okay. And as you know, I enroll all my guests in a perpetual mass, so you and your family are
I
enjoying
really do
the
appreciate
graces
that.
of
That's
that.
amazing.
That's a Catholic life hack I learned from an old guy here in Montreal that had a youth group,
Yeah.
and he would just enroll living people in these things, because most people do it for the recently deceased, right? That's like a
Yeah.
thing that people do, but you can enroll the living. I
Yeah. It's
actually
like if you could get prayer said for you at a mass, that's amazing.
I even have enrolled the Holy Souls in Purgatory in a perpetual mass, if you can believe that one.
I love that you're in love with all these quirky things the church does, because people don't realize the treasures that we have. These really are treasures that the church gives us. It's like, yeah, like, let the outside world think we're crazy, but like, go find these little things that are weird about Catholicism. Like, I love that we're weird. I want to be
Absolutely.
like everybody else. I want to be different.
So keep in touch. We'll see each other on Twitter probably.
Yep,
And whenever you have an open invitation, okay? So you know how to book the show. You
absolutely.
just book it and come on and we'll chat. And so God bless you. I love you very much. Okay, my brother?
Thank you so much, David.
Take good care. We'll
You
talk
too.
soon. Bye bye.